News Plus studio. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of InFocus. We're live in the 22 News Plus studios. Across the desk from me today is Bill Cole. He is the president and founder of Living Local 413. Bill, thank you so very much for joining me today. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Biggest question I got for you. What is Living Local 413?
Well, Living Local 413 is basically a business community development organization that focuses on Western Mass. So
Okay.
All of Western Mass. So in other words,
All 4 counties.
I was just going to say, so it's not 2 counties, it's not 3, it's actually 4. And there's actually 103 towns and cities.
Wow.
And about 40,000 businesses. So, it really matters because, especially in this day and age, we really need to figure out how to come together and get things done. And after doing a lot of homework, I realized that we really need to do it as a region because, you try to do it just as one town or one city or, even one county. It's really just not enough. There's just not enough people.
So it's business development?
Yeah,
So
business community development.
Okay.
So that's what's a little bit different. So it's not just about business development, like individual businesses and things like that. It's about the entire business community.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is pulling together all of us as a community. Okay. There are wonderful, organizations, businesses, people all over Western Mass doing great things, and the problem is you really wouldn't know it. There's not everybody has marketing money and
Right.
and PR and, all the different things it takes to get yourself out there or get whatever it is you're doing out there. And the truth is we are in a situation at this point where we have a lot of challenges. And a lot of them, if you sort of come down to the local level, are, our towns and cities are no longer sustainable. The model that they use. A lot of people don't realize that suburbs don't pay for themselves as much as we feel like we're paying too much in taxes.
Right.
What used to pay for all of that was downtowns. And downtowns are no more. Or let's put it this way, they're hurting, at the very best, case scenario. And I think we all kind of know that. But I don't think anybody really understands that there's a solution or if there's a solution or if there's a path, forward to dealing with that thing. And really what it comes down to is we have to start doing things bottom up. We sort of let things go to the point where we have, big business, big academia, big government, all the bigs, just sort of leave it to them. And they can't do everything.
So how do you differentiate from, say, a business improvement district, a chamber of commerce, where they seem to be doing the same thing?
Yeah. So that's the model that's literally 100-year-old model. So it makes sense that you would think that because what else would you compare it to, right? Because there's really nothing else that literally compares to that we all have, handy as we go into a discussion like this. The reality is we literally shine light on what they're doing. Okay, but they can't serve the entire population, even the business population. Okay, they just don't. They're membership organizations. They deal with a segment of the business community in any given town or city, and usually several towns or cities. But again, they're not big enough to cover it all. And so a good 80+% of the business community in Western Mass is not part of one of those organizations. Is not plugged in, and quite frankly, they're just not plugged in at all. They have their own little group of people that they interact with, customers, clients, etc. But that's not the same thing as all of us getting together behind something and getting things done.
So if where your chamber and your bid are membership organizations, how does Living Local 413 work? Are people
we are a regional organization, first of all. So that's really important to understand that we are all 4 counties and we're looking at the whole thing, including the chambers and the other organizations that are already here.
So you connecting businesses, say, in East Longmeadow and Adams.
Yeah.
Okay. And whereas a chamber wouldn't really.
And the organization. So of course, if we work with the organizations, we get that chunk, right? So if we work with a bunch of organizations, we get a lot more. Right. And then, of course, we are open to individual organizations and businesses and people and so on and so forth. And I think it's important to understand that the way that I'm going about this is really 2 different ways. One is we have an online platform that's just for us. Okay. So it's just Western Mass business community. Okay, there's not all the algorithms and the craziness and the ads and the people that you really don't want to hear about and millions of people vying for attention and all that kind of stuff. No, it's just us. So it has similar functionality for a social media platform or any other thing that we're used to using, but there's things built into it. There's programs like 413 Calendar, which has all the business community development, or not just development, but business community events that are happening in the area, all preloaded. And so you can take a look at what's happening over the next couple of months and actually see it all in one place, including, by the way, the chambers and the other organizations and things like that, right? So the idea is you don't just have, one calendar that represents one organization's, businesses or members and events. You have all of them, just Western Mass, all in one place. So if you go out to the state level, it's a little bit too big, right? Things end up going to Boston. Right. That tends to happen, right? But when you go regionally, you have enough people involved. There's still enough happening. But now we have, a representation for Western Mass that we've never had before. And that's all of us.
So how do businesses become a part of it?
Yep.
Do they seek you out? Do you seek them out?
Mm-hmm.
Do other businesses say, hey, you need to get involved in this? Yeah. It's helping me?
So one really exciting thing is in September, we started our in-person programming, which started with our 413 Entrepreneur Spotlight event. The first one was in September. The last one just happened last Thursday. And it's really literally exactly what it just says. So it's an evening of spotlighting or putting attention on local entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And we packed the house both times, and people are really excited about it. And so you can come and experience that and sort of get the vibe and get interested and learn a little bit about what Living Local is, and then jump online and kind of dig in, and so we can communicate and keep those discussions going in between events.
Okay. Certainly. I mean, it certainly sounds like that marketing arm that we talked about at the start of this, that local businesses can take advantage of to help grow their business really organically among other businesses. Do I have it?
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly accurate. There's a lot going on here that has to do with the power of gathering us together as a group and doing things and making people aware. And then, of course, sharing resources, right? So the other thing that's on there is 413 Resources, which is all of the business help resources available to Western Mass business communities, again, all in one place, so we can access it all.
Right.
And so a lot of this comes down to access, right? And just being a part of a community together. There's a lot of things that happened over the last decades that have pulled us all apart. And we all tend to sort of be in our little siloed and in some cases competitive and all of these sort of things. And I've been here for 40 years in this business community, and I kind of know what's going on as far as that stuff goes. And again, there's great people doing great things, organizations, businesses, big business, small business, whatever it is. There's all kinds of great things happening, but there's nothing bringing us all together.
Right.
And because of that, we're not able to solve a lot of the problems that we are faced with at this point.
And we are up on our first commercial break. We're here with Bill Cole talking about living and doing business right here in the 413. We'll be right back after this.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of In Focus. Across the desk from me today is Bill Cole. He is the president and founder of Living Local 413. Bill, let me ask you, how long has this Living Local 413 been around?
It's actually been around for a very long time. So Joy Levitt, who used to own Kiddlywinks in the toy store. Yeah,
that's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
Yeah. So she and a bunch of people from the Long Meadow shops started something called Living Local. And really what it was they got together once a month and basically kind of just talked and networked and just kind of talked about what was going on. At that time, you saw a lot of larger businesses coming into the Long Meadow shops, know, and so it was kind of a reaction to that.
The small mom and pop shop are having a tough time.
Exactly. And, I joined that a couple of years later and was a part of it and became a board member and so on. And, it sort of stagnated like a lot of small organizations like that do. I mean, it kind of got to a point. I think there was like 100 members, and we didn't do a whole lot. We just sort of talked about it. I mean, obviously, the cause is great, in the sense of living local. Who doesn't like that, right? And then basically, when she retired and closed the store, and she wanted to move to Boston and be closer to her family, She called me up one day and said, geez, I'd love to have you take this over. I don't want to see it die on the vine, and I said, absolutely not. I have way too much going on. There's no way. I mean, there would be a ton of work to take that on, et cetera. And I hang up the phone, and my wife, who is always, just sitting behind me saying, you're going to do that, right?
They know us better than we think, right?
And always, she was right. It started sticking in my head, and I started thinking about, well, what would I do with it? And that's kind of how it all started.
So, what was your background? What did you do in life leading up to that moment you got the call?
Yeah. So, I mean, realistically, I'm like the original local entrepreneur. I mean, I literally had my first business idea when I was 16 in my parents' house. I built myself a pair of speakers. My buddies came over and they're like, holy crap, those are awesome. Would you want to sell it? And the light bulb went off. And I went, well,
they're not for sale, but everything's for sale.
Well, how much would you be willing to pay? Right. And that ended up turning into a business called Sound Advice Systems, which went on for 20 some odd years we had a big showroom in Springfield on Main Street. The old Batero and Skolnick building, and 5 guys in trucks out there doing installs and doing custom theater rooms and so on and so forth. And it was a really good business basically up until the housing market crashed
in 2008.
Yeah, okay. And once that crashed, the writing was on the wall. There was a lot of things that were happening, like all the equipment was commoditized. We had superstores all over the place, blowing this stuff out and et cetera, et cetera. But long story short, the last thing I did for that business was created a website. And that was back in the day when you didn't have drag and drop, right? So I had to write code. And so I learned how to write code. And right after that, once I closed that business, I said, that was kind of interesting doing that website. Maybe I could do that. And I started Tiger Web Designs, which is how I ended up being, fairly successful here. And it's what I do today to make a living.
So living local 413 is not your primary role. It's secondary to
it's
the web design.
Slowly becoming my primary role. It is my passion, let's say. Okay. I mean, because the truth of the matter is, because I've been here all my life and I've been plugged into the business community, the majority of my adult life, I'm very aware of what's going on, maybe more so than the average person. And I also understand what great things are happening and all the great different organizations and people and so on. But I also, quite painfully understand what's not happening and where are the gaps, and what can all these great people not accomplish the way things are right now? What do we need to do to change? And that's really what Living Local is all about, is my response to that.
So outside of your real job, you're out there traveling the 4 counties of Western Mass, meeting with business owners to try and figure out what their touch points are to become successful, what the hurdles are they might be facing. It could be downtown Shelburne Falls. What are we facing to get more foot traffic in this market to, hey, I make widgets in Wilbraham.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, actually. So a lot of it tends to boil down, right?
Okay.
So every town's different, every company's different, every organization's different, et cetera. Granted, however, there are certain common threads, right? So if you take a dead or dying, Main Street, if you will, and try to put a business on it, what's going to happen?
It's never going to survive.
It's not going to work, right? I mean, it's not rocket science, right?
Yeah.
I think we all can understand that fairly easily. So the government says, well, I mean, that's because nobody's living on Main Street, so build housing. Totally cool. That's a correct statement. We do need to build housing. But who the heck wants to live on a dead Main Street?
Right.
Right? So it isn't that simple. But it is, in essence, the answer is the next level, which is, okay, how do I create villages? How do I create communities? That's what builds downtowns, are the great little communities that are formed, and that's the way the main streets were built in the first place, right?
Sure.
I mean, it wasn't just one entity, like a big government entity or something like that built downtown Springfield or Greenfield or any of those things. It was a group of people over a long period of time saying, hey, we need a building for this. We need a building for that,
coming together
and
to
it was
create
specific purpose. It wasn't something just for the heck of it. We weren't just building housing for the sake of housing. We were building the right kind of housing for the people that were there and wanted it. Right. And so the bottom line is our Living Local Villages is one of our initiatives, and that's really addressing that issue and looking at that issue very closely and working with the individual towns and cities to address that and see if we can come up with a self-contained or self-sustaining village within a space on Main Street.
So I look at our main streets as not existing as they once did when we were kids.
That's right.
Because of the online, the ability online. So how are you talking to businesses and people to, is it brick and mortar stores you're looking for, or they're trying to create in these villages?
Right. So we cannot bring the cobbler back and expect that to work on
Although I need a good shoe guy.
Well, I use that example for a reason. Okay. So my example is, the bottom line is, if maybe you could take a cobbler today, which would be kind of cool at this point, right? Somebody really knew what they were doing and built a quality shoe, and then had an app that measures your foot, right? And an online store, combined with that in-person location that you could come in and get to know the actual cobbler, right? And go through that whole thing. And that'll work. That has possibilities.
Different,
it's
old school with modern day to bring it all together.
So we have to learn from the past and apply it as best we can, but not with our eyes shut about what today is, right? And what tomorrow is. You know, I mean, we have some incredibly disruptive technology heading our way. It's pretty much here now, but it's going to get more intense and more intense. And what it really comes down to, and what I really want to emphasize, is no matter what it is, we need to get through it together. We cannot do this siloed and independent of each other. We have to pull ourselves together as a business community. And the reason I start with the business community is because it's kind of the logical thing to start with, right? So if we have a thriving business community in Joe Schmo town, whatever town that is, right? That tends to take care of a lot of other things, because local business people take care of local problems. That's how it's always been. And that still is the same.
We are up on our next commercial break. We're here with Bill Cole talking about living in the 413. We'll be right back after this.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of In Focus. I am your host, Patrick Berry. We're here in the 22 News Plus studios. Sitting across the desk from me is Bill Cole. He is the president and founder of Living Local 413. When we left a moment ago, we were talking about, how our local communities are changing. Bill, I got the entrepreneurial bug about, I'd say 15 years ago, 2010. I was working in the corporate world, had worked in the corporate world for my entire adult life up until that point. And I don't know what it was. I ended up buying a business locally and running it for about 8 or 9 years before I sold it. But that entrepreneurial bug has always been in me ever since that day. I think I'm unique. Am I?
No, not
really.
You would be surprised.
My mother were only still alive to hear you say that.
Well, in our day, if you will, and I'm going to age myself a little bit here, but when I was growing up, being an entrepreneur meant you were broke. In other words, if you're a mother of a daughter and she wants to date a guy and you asked what he does for a living or wanted to do for a living, and he said, entrepreneur, be like, oh boy,
exactly.
Here we go, right? And so there are some realities to that. It's not an easy thing to do. That's why, it takes a certain kind of person to be successful doing it. But the other thing that has to happen, besides you being the right kind of person, is you have to have the right kind of community to help you do that and become a better entrepreneur. And what's interesting is a lot of that has less to do with schooling and that kind of stuff than it does with real world experience. And, the truth of the matter is a lot of becoming a great entrepreneur is failure. Not even success, believe it or not. That's what everybody talks about. It's what everybody sees.
But how many times can you pull yourself up?
Well, what did you do when you failed, right? So people who go back to corporate probably should go back to corporate and stay there. It's okay. It's not like it's a bad thing, But the reality is, if you want to keep going as an entrepreneur and you've got what it takes in you, you need to learn how to be a better entrepreneur, bottom line. And in order to do that, a lot of what I am good at, I have learned because of things that failed, and that's just a reality that really the big Bs, if you will, the big government, big business, and big academia don't really get that well. I mean, it's just hard to do in their world, I mean,
so is that what Living Local 413 does? Is it connects those wannabe entrepreneurs with the the people who have done it for 20, 30 years and can help you foresee some of the hurdles you need to get over.
So the idea is you have to picture Living Local as bringing the entire business community of Western Mass together. I mean, every single one. So everybody's invited into this circle. Literally big, small, for-profit, nonprofit, doesn't matter. It's part of the business community of Western Mass. And by doing that, we give everybody access not only to resources and all the other great things that are there, but to each other. Right. And a lot of entrepreneurship is having the right mentors. Right. Having somebody like, let's say you want to open a restaurant. Right. Well, who better than somebody who's already been successful in the restaurant business here in Western Mass to help you do that? And they will. Generally speaking, people like that. One of our board members is Bill Collins. I mean, he's been an incredibly successful restaurateur, and amongst other things. And the fact of the matter is, we have that. We have him and others in our area, in our communities. And we just there isn't a great way for him to tap into or give over that unless he's a part of something like this. That's really what it takes.
Now, do you see the younger generation is the same way it was maybe 15, 20 years ago? Go to college, get that corporate job, and go on with life. I look at it a little differently. I see a lot of families getting frustrated with that traditional track. I remember when I was a kid, my father didn't want me to be a blue collar worker like he was. He wanted me to go to college, blah, blah, blah. Right. Now, I think that's shifting back because, you look at to your point a few minutes ago, artificial intelligence is here. It's not going anywhere. It's only going to get worse.
Absolutely.
And that will take a lot of jobs, whether we want to admit it or not.
It will.
So I see a lot of families looking at the trades and how people can be entrepreneurs in their community and make a heck of a good living.
Yeah. I mean, there's really nothing. So years ago, we shifted, you're right, from, we had like wood shops and metal shops and engineering shops and all kinds of different things built into our high schools and our and so on. I mean, these weren't trade schools. This was part of our education. And, I think things have shifted back. Like we were saying earlier, I've been mentoring for a long time because I've been in business for a long time. And we won't say how many years, but a lot of years. And the reality is I've seen an absolute definite shift back when I first started mentoring and going to colleges, to mentor classrooms and things. It came down to, I would always ask at the beginning, how many of you are looking for the corporate job and how many of you want to be local entrepreneurs? And back when I first started doing this, they all wanted corporate jobs. And there'd be a couple of people maybe that wanted to do the local entrepreneur thing.
I look at that before you continue. Back then, the corporate job was safe.
That's right.
It's
Stability.
a safe way to spend 40 years.
Absolutely.
I work my way up the ladder, get my raises, do my thing.
Yep.
Entrepreneurship is a risk.
It is.
It's a challenge.
It is. And it's a group activity.
Right. But with layoffs in the corporate world, entrepreneurship is looking better.
Yeah. And the question is that we have to ask ourselves, and there's a lot of them, but one of the things is, what do we need to do to create a self-sustaining town?
Right.
Okay. Or city, whatever it is, doesn't matter. It's all the same question, right? And what that really means, if you drill down on it a little bit, is, okay, what do we need? Right? What do I need living in this town? What do I need? So I need daycare. I need, this and that and the other thing. So let's not just randomly open up businesses on Main Street. Let's figure out what Main Street needs and the people that are living there want, and get entrepreneurs who are interested in doing that. Right.
That's how you
teach them
become successful, is meet the need.
Exactly. It's not rocket science, and like many, many things I deal with, but the problem is it's overwhelming.
Right,
all of this together is overwhelming. And that's why we need this one organization that looks at the entire region and kind of brings it all together, because it's going to take us all working together to figure all this out. It really is.
Absolutely. Well, we are up on our time. Bill Cole, I want to thank you so very much for giving us a little bit of insight into Living Local 413. And the website is livinglocal413.org.
Yes. And I do want to mention real quick that the platform that we have for everybody is 413online.com.
413online.com.
You got it.
Excellent. Thank you so very much.
Okay.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.